Hi, my name's Heather Pointer. I've been in the beauty industry and also wellness industry for 32 years. But I really want to introduce you to this awesome colleague of mine, Pam Harris. Pam worked in medicine for 43 years. 23 of those years were as an acute care nurse. And then she had her two gorgeous boys, and then trained herself to be a medical herbalist and also a balm therapist. One thing I know about Pam is she never stops learning, and she's one of the people that in my industry that I absolutely look up to, and I cannot get enough of what she's got to say. So I urge you to have a look and listen to what she's got to say in this recording. Over to you.
Thanks, Heather. You're very kind. Now, today, what I wanted to talk to you about is the weight loss program that has been developed by RX. It's a new company that's opening in Australia this year. We're just in the pre-launch at the moment, but I'm pretty excited about this product range. And so I've developed a PowerPoint that hopefully help everybody understand how the products work. So let me just minimize myself and we'll move through the slides. So there we go. Excellent. Now, what I'm going to teach you is how to completely transform your body and change the way that your body metabolizes. What is metabolism? So we've got this interesting slide that Tom has put together, and these are all the things that block weight loss or affect weight loss. So here we are, we've got metabolism over here, and there's all sorts of things. Most people think that to lose weight, you've just got to reduce your calories and increase your appetite. But unfortunately, there's all these other things that affect our weight loss. So let me take them through you and explain how our products work. So I'm really, really excited, and this is the main reason why I've made this PowerPoint up, is because I've realised that the product range from RX, when you combine everything together and follow the program, reduces this thing called insulin resistance. Now, if you work in medicine, you would be aware that type 2 diabetes is just a massive, massive problem in society. When I first started working as a nurse, it was in the 70s, and someone being a type 2 diabetic was really unusual, and it was generally an older person that was really naughty and ate lots of sweet things. But it's the demographic is changing in the last 43 years. It's completely shifted. So the things that affect your blood sugar are here on the right. The beta cell function, that's the cells in your pancreas that produce insulin. Glucose tolerance is how quickly you can clear glucose out of your blood, and you should be able to clear, you know, like a big dose of sugar in a couple of hours if your pancreas is working properly. The big issue and why it's highlighted there is insulin resistance, and this is the one thing that is almost becoming the holy grail of medicine, because I think myself that about 80% of the population is insulin resistant. It's no longer in older people. I've seen it in an 11-year-old, which is really scary. And of course, when you all those three things at the top combine together and you start gaining lots of weight around your tummy, it's known as metabolic syndrome. And if it continues, then it develops into type 2 diabetes. Now, we're not talking about a type 1 diabetic. A type 1 diabetic is an autoimmune disease, and their pancreas do not make insulin, so they have to inject it, okay? What I'm going to discuss today is type 2 diabetes, and this, hopefully you never get to the point where you need insulin, but if you do, or even if you're taking medications, please be aware that this problem is reversible, and I'm going to show you how you can do it. Look at these stats here on the right. So it's risen from over 100 million in 1980 when I first registered as a nurse. It was 1978. So I hardly ever saw a diabetic, but look how many we've got now. Like, it's just scary, and it's going to continue to rise. And the thing is that I mentioned earlier that occasionally you would see it in older people, but now approximately 24% of our young people are developing diabetes. And that is so shocking to me, because if you knew the burden on society from this problem, you would be so motivated to reverse it and to help all your family and friends reverse it as well. Horrific costs, not just to the society in general, but to families, all the problems that you get from it. So let's go through it. Now, I found that I could talk really dryly about that previous slide, really, you know, I could go on for an hour about all the things, but I needed to teach everyone how it affects your body. And so what I want you to do is imagine that your body is a massive metropolis. And each of the houses are a body cell. The roads are the blood vessels, and the power lines are the nerves. This makes it really easy to understand a really complex physiology. So the human body only really has three sources of fuel: glucose, fats, and proteins. And so for the last 40 years or so, we've been really running on the two sources on each side, the glucose and proteins, or carbohydrates and proteins. And everyone's been trying to avoid the lady in the middle. And if I achieve nothing else today, it's that I want you to learn to love the lady in the middle. Fat is an essential part of our bodies. Our brain especially needs it, okay? And it is actually a more efficient source of energy. So all nutrients are metabolized through the liver, and in our metropolis today, we're going to use the pentagon as the liver. Like the pentagon, the liver is very deceptive. It sits just, you know, tucked up on the right side of your tummy, but a lot of it's under your ribs, and people aren't aware of how big it is and also how busy it is. So here's fats. This is the lady I want you to learn to love. You can eat fats or you can synthesize them. That means that the liver can actually make fats. It makes both triglyceride and cholesterol. Triglycerides are used more for energy, and cholesterol is used more for structure, especially in your brain. It's a really, really critical component of your brain. And the names, they give you fats, all sorts of crazy names, but it's due to the amount of carbon bonds that is in the molecule. So they're called saturated, monounsaturated, or polyunsaturated, okay? But don't be afraid of them all. What you need to be afraid of are these guys, trans fats. Now, these are the things that have been really, really highly processed. They're really chemicals, and they create absolute metabolic chaos. Stay away from trans fats. These are the things that are in all the baked goods, all the cooked goods, the things that make food last for, you know, decades. So you don't want to be eating those. You do, however, want to be eating medium-chain fatty acids. They literally are the bomb. And this is where we can get huge amounts of energy for all of our body from medium-chain fatty acids. They can be saturated or unsaturated, so don't get hooked up on those two names. So when you're talking about fat and medium-chain fatty acids, coconut oil is the best one. It's right smack in the middle of all the bonds. It's got CH8. So, yeah, that metabolizes really, really fast and really effectively. Now, we've only really got 2 fatty acids that we need. These are called essential fatty acids, and it's called omega-3 and omega-6. So as you can see there, omega-3 reduces the inflammation. It's an anti-inflammatory, whereas omega-6 tends to drive it. Why do you need something that's going to drive inflammation? Inflammation is really a good way that the body deals with all sorts of things that can go wrong. It will create an inflammation so that the immune system can come in and deal with the problem. So we do need to have that process occurring just a little bit in our body. It's when it gets rampant and out of control that it becomes a problem. And the reason why so many people in modern society have chronic inflammation is because our diet is skewed to have too many omega-6 and not enough omega-3. Now, the ratio of these 2 fatty acids are meant to be 3 omega-3 molecules for every 1 omega-6. And in our modern diet, at the moment, we get 13 omega-6s to every 1 omega-3. So we all need to reverse that ratio and fast. These are healthy fat sources. Okay, of course, you've got coconut up the top there, avocados, nuts, olives, things like that, and also animal sources. But it's important that they're animals that have been grass-fed, not grain-fed. Otherwise, they're going to be full of omega-6s again. So it's animals that have been out in the pasture or free-range chickens, and also fish, but wild fish, not farmed fish. They feed farm fish with pellets. Okay, I'm a bit dodgy on seafood altogether at the moment because of the amount of stuff that goes into the ocean, but that's a really important thing if you're eating things like farm salmon. Well, all salmon in Australia is farmed, so don't be thinking that you're getting lots of healthy fats, because you're not. Okay, now let's talk about glucose. Everybody loves sugar. It's a really fast-acting energy source. It's really easily metabolized. However, it does need to be helped a little bit in the body, and also excess levels of it create really a lot of metabolic chaos. So it's important to be aware that your pancreas, which is on the left top side of your tummy, monitors glucose. So not only does it monitor stuff when it comes into your tummy and it helps carbohydrates digest, it also releases a hormone called insulin, and that supports glucose. So it doesn't actually, it's not like it has to carry it around, but it monitors it. And when we get to the cell, it's really important that it's there, because the cell cannot enter, or glucose rather, cannot enter the cell without insulin activating the receptor. Okay, so glucose can roam around the streets as much as it likes, but it can't get into the cell unless insulin is there. Now, a lot of people don't realise that these carbohydrates are all hidden sources of glucose. And I've got this freaky gremlin up there on the top left side because it's a hormone that controls your appetite. It's called ghrelin, and it behaves like a gremlin. It's the thing that makes you hangry. So all of these sources of food here are really high in sugar, because the carbohydrates break down into sugar really fast. And these pictures all show carbohydrates that are highly processed. Now the figure, the red numbers on each of the pictures, are related to how many teaspoons of sugar are in each of those products. So one slice of white bread, a medium slice, not a super big one and not a super small one, a medium size, has got 6.5 teaspoons of sugar. a bowl of macaroni cheese, the pasta, breaks down into almost 8 teaspoons of sugar. Look what a bowl of instant noodles does, 8.7 teaspoons of sugar. Breakfast cereals. Why would you give your kid almost 18 teaspoons of sugar for breakfast? Do you think that kid is going to behave normally at school? I don't think so. And the other thing that really shocked me was the bag of chips. Oh my God, because these are so processed, they break down into almost 38 teaspoons of sugar. I would hope that this is a big bag of chips. I'm going to have to clarify that. But my goodness me, is it any wonder that we go into a food coma after we eat all this stuff and then get completely hyperactive afterwards? So let's eat something. Let's go visit Nana. We've gone to work, we've grabbed the kids from school, and we're on our way home. We're just going to call in and visit Mum. Unfortunately, Nana is really naughty. She knows everybody's hungry. The kids have just finished school, and she knows that you didn't really eat breakfast and you skipped lunch. So what does she buy? Tray of donuts. You're so hungry, so are the kids. No one can decide which donut they want. So we cut them in, each donut into 4, which means that you end up eating almost 2 donuts. And what happens inside your body when you eat all that food? So glucose and trans fat get together, and that just, you know, these guys are just going to smear all over the road or do something. Like, it's just not good mixing those things together. But what happens when these energy sources enter your cell? Okay, so what we've got here is we've got 3 glucose molecules and a fat molecule. Insulin has activated the receptor site so that the sugar, the glucose, can get in. Fat doesn't need it. It needs something different. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the 2 glucose, these guys are from the donut. This little sugar molecule is from the icing, and here's the fat. Of course, sugar has a party. That's what it does. Sugar metabolizes really, really super fast. But when it's mixed with fat, and especially a trans fat, this is what happens inside your cell. So it's important that everybody understands that insulin resistance is the reduction and loss of insulin receptors on the cell wall. And this is probably one of the most difficult things to correct for a medical practitioner. So instead of, we've got this girl with an amazing, you know, sliding door and a remote and everything works really well, and then all of a sudden that receptor site turns into this really creaky door that's really hard to open, and then it disappears altogether. If you keep forcing your cells to party that hard, they just can't hack it, and they go, oh no, I'm done with glucose. We're not going to let it in anymore. So glucose is stuck in the blood vessels. It can't get into the cells. So what does glucose do? It just has a party in the blood vessels. And more importantly, all the tiny little blood vessels, all the cul-de-sacs and the lanes in the metropolis has got glucose accumulating in it. It's okay to let it accumulate a little bit, but if you let it accumulate too much, it really turns into a party. Now, these are children in a cul-de-sac, okay? And you know that it's going to damage the blood vessels, not just the blood vessels, but the nerves as well. So this is what happens after you've let all those glucose molecules collect in those little tiny vessels, okay? Not only do they leave rubbish and everything, but they actually put gouges in the blood vessel itself. They damage the nerves. And so neuropathy is a really terrible side effect of type 2 diabetes. And it's an absolute bummer if you start losing your toes and your feet, and maybe you have to lose your whole lower legs because everything is so damaged. But it's a real bummer when it starts affecting your heart and your brain and your eyes and your renal function. And this is the cost to society and to families out there when you've got people that are so damaged from eating all the sugar that they've got reduced, they're having heart attacks, they've got memory loss, their vision is deteriorated, and they need to end up having renal dialysis. But that is just not a journey you would wish on anyone. So as glucose increases in the blood vessels, so you're getting more and more sugar molecules in the streets because they can't get into the cell wall, it gets bigger and bigger. Now, this is all children, remember, in the streets, and there's lots and lots of insulin molecules trying to deal with it, but the cells are not responding. So what happens is that the liver monitors insulin, doesn't monitor glucose. The pancreas does that. But when the pancreas gets overwhelmed like this, the liver goes, okay, time out. We need to intervene here. This is getting really dangerous. So an increase in glucose leads to an increase in insulin, which leads to glucose being converted to triglyceride. So this is the glucose molecule, and it gets an upgrade in the liver, and it gets converted into a fat. And a lot of people are not aware that sugar turns to body fat. Where do you put a triglyceride that looks like that? In a fat cell. So think of the fat cells as like a gaming lab. So this gaming lab or fat cell can store lots and lots of fatty acids and triglycerides. This is another important thing that people aren't aware of, is that the fat cells don't just have one fatty acid in it or one molecule of fat. It's got hundreds and hundreds, so they can increase and decrease in size. Another issue hormonally that derails us is when we're really stressed. So if there's lots of sugar molecules and chaos going on in the blood, what happens is that cortisol is released, and it tells everybody to get back into the gaming lab and off the streets, okay? So cortisol is a fat storing hormone. Now, if you're on any kind of weight loss program, you cannot lose weight if you have an elevated cortisol. It will completely and absolutely derail you. So it's important that you keep your stress levels down. The other thing to be aware of is that when the kidneys are filtering all your waste out through your blood, there are some things that it will not let in. The kidneys have a dress code, and if anything looks too crazy, it knows that it's going to damage the inside of it, the little renal tubules, and so it won't excrete some things. It just says, no, back in the blood. And so then what happens? It goes back to the liver, and the liver's got to put it somewhere. So where do you put someone like that? Back in the gaming lab. And it gets bigger and bigger, and more crazy things get hidden in there. So this is where we end up when all of that metabolic chaos is occurring. The cells aren't getting fed, so you're constantly hungry. When you eat, you have a food coma. You're really tired. Your weight is ballooning out, especially in your tummy. Aches and pains everywhere, because this whole physiology is going to be driving inflammation. Your body's trying to flush it out, so you have an increased thirst, and because of that, you have to go to the bathroom more, okay? It throws out all sorts of hormone functions, especially the thyroid and especially estrogen. There is a really high correlation between insulin resistance and estrogen dominance, this polycystic ovarian disease, and you see poor women with these big bands of acne around their jawline, okay? So this is related to insulin resistance. So now what we're seeing is what I, as a young nurse, saw in 70 and 80-year-olds, we're seeing in a quarter of our young people. And I'm not talking about people in their 20s, I'm talking about 11 and 12 and 15-year-olds. How has this happened to us? How have we reached this point in less than 40 years? Well, I'm blaming these two guys. So this is a powerful, powerful, powerful hormonal driver. So ghrelin is the thing that makes you hungry. And when you have eaten enough, ghrelin is meant to go down and leptin is meant to rise and you feel satisfied. And instead, in most of us, ghrelin is just constantly out of control. Ghrelin loves sugar. So ghrelin loves carbs. The answer is to really change your fuel. We need to really start eating better food. You literally are what you eat. I'm not sure how long it takes for all your body cells to be replaced, but it's pretty fast, and it's, you know, they're replaced with food that we consume. So change your fuel. Let's clean our act up. The first thing we need to do is get into that poor cell. The cells have been partying, and you need to clean the cells up. So CoQ10 is a fat-soluble antioxidant. It's the main cleaning agent inside our bodies. And so when you take CoQ10, all your cells get a spring clean. The other thing is that we want to reduce that insulin resistance. So taking omega-3, magnesium and exercise are the three things that really rapidly correct insulin resistance. So we've got this door that is no longer there, and we want to like spruce it up and turn it into a revolving door, yeah, a nice clean rapid one. We want that receptor sites to work really fast. So you need to coat the outside of your cell membrane with omega-3. It's an essential fatty acid. So I love this product because it's got CoQ10 and omega-3 in it together. So this is my #1 product to go to straight away. Now, if you don't believe how important it is to have enough omega-3 in your body, I want you to look at what happens to red blood cells when they're deficient in omega-3. So this is the little red blood cell here. They're kind of concave, and they're meant to like just float around like that in the blood, and they've got lots and lots of oxygen molecules attached to the surface. But if you don't have enough omega-3 in your body, this is what happens to the red blood cells. Look, they stick all together like a stack of coins. Now, you can see quite clearly that these red blood cells over here are not going to be carrying as much oxygen as these guys. So oxygen is a critical thing in our body. Your brain can only survive 3 minutes without it. So we want our blood vessels to be working as well as they can. Magnesium. Now, these are the sources of magnesium in the diet. We've got these optimal vitamins and optimal minerals. So obviously the magnesium is going to be in the minerals here. But also we've got this fantastic product, Magnecal D, and that's got calcium and magnesium in it together. And it's got cofactors vitamin K. So I've only just learned this myself. See, you learn things, 43 years, I'm still learning. You need vitamin K as like a traffic cop for those two minerals. So you don't want calcium going into the walls of the blood vessels. You want it going into the bones and the ligaments, and you want magnesium to stay in the muscles. So vitamin K directs those things, and then vitamin D is really, really important for so many intricate functions of our physiology. So that, I love the Magnecal D product. Okay, now this is going to be the hardest thing to get anyone to do is to exercise. If you've got someone that sits in bed eating pizza all the time, how are you going to get them out of the house and living life? All right, because this is the absolute hands down most effective way to get rid of insulin resistance. These babies, I call them my zippy pills. And I did really resist taking them, but after I've researched this product and tried it myself, oh my gosh, it's so amazing. I tend to sit in the corner of the lounge room online doing stuff, working, and so I really, really try to avoid exercising, and of course that's why my weight is blown out. And so I just take one of these, and I literally cannot sit all day in the chair. I have to get up and move around. So that is helping me hugely, and I know that it's going to help anyone that takes them. It's got caffeine in it from the green coffee bean that you see down here in the bottom line, but it's green coffee bean, so there's heaps of antioxidants in it, and it's got L-theanine in it. So instead of you turning into like a crazy hyped up person, I know it just opens your mind, like you're heading towards that limitless hill. If there was anything that was close to that, it'd have to be this combination. L-theanine is just amazing with caffeine. And of course, we've got hawthorn there. That's really, really great for your heart. And chamomile calms your nervous system down. So you don't get tachycardia, okay? You just get this really amazing increase in mental and physical alertness. Now, the weight loss program with RX is really focused around the day-night drops, and these day drops are the things that is my secret weapon in decreasing ghrelin up here and increasing leptin. So tasting cacao reduces your appetite. It helps you choose half the calories that you will when you don't taste it. So it's in the day drops. You take 15 drops about half an hour before you eat, just so that that's the maximum effect you get. If you forget to take it, for goodness sakes, just take them when you remember. It's better than not taking them at all. And don't take more than 15 drops, because what happens is that you get an increased dose of guarana, and that can cause issues with sleeping. So we don't want to take too much of that. And the guarana and green tea help reduce your hunger pains as well. These are great. I love, love, love these drops. In them also there is white bean extract, and that slows down the absorption of carbohydrates. So on the diet, there's no bread, no grains, and no dairy, but you can eat as much meat and salad and a small amount of fruit that you want. So because you're eating veggies, there are carbohydrates in veggies. We can't get rid of them altogether. So this slows down the absorption of the carbs, and it slows down the carbohydrates being converted into sugar in the blood. It's also got chromium in it, and that's going to help the pancreas. So now instead of the insulin is not yellow anymore, it's white, the buses are white, everything's smaller and more controlled, okay? We don't have this, raging source of insulin going. If you pump the pancreas too hard, eventually it gets really tired and stops working altogether. So we need to really support the function of our pancreases. Now, what we're aiming for in this whole training really is to reduce the size of our metropolis. Yeah? So how do we do that? We need to put our bodies into ketosis. Once you go into ketosis, then what happens is that the liver instructs the fat cells to release the fatty acids. So remember, the fatty acids have been stuck inside that gaming lab. So the liver instructs them to be released. This is what they look like when they get out. But it's important that you understand that they can't just get into the cells like glucose. They need something to be attached to them. Glucose needs insulin, fatty acids need coenzyme A. Now, look here on the left at the difference in the amount of energy that's produced between glucose and fat. So you can see that the right kind of fat is actually a better and more effective fuel source. Look at that, that's crazy. ATP are the molecules of energy that a cell creates in the little kind of battery area of the cell. So glucose creates 38 and fat creates 129. That's crazy.
Incredible.
Fatty acids, however, cannot pass through the blood-brain barrier. There is this barrier that the brain puts around itself trying to protect itself, and not everything can get through. So what is the brain going to do? We've got no glucose in the blood, and all we've got is fat and protein. So the brain needs another fuel source. So it converts, it sends a message to the liver saying, okay, I need more fuel, and because there's no glucose or because there's no insulin, according to the liver, then it instructs, pulls some fatty acids into it, and then actually deep inside the pentagon then, the fatty acids are converted into ketones. Now, what's really interesting about this is that ketones are a much more efficient fuel, and they create heaps less intracellular chaos. So the brain really, really loves ketones. It works much, much more effectively on it. There's a scientist that has just done a study on it, and he's discovered that when the brain is feeding on ketones, the Navy SEAL divers can stay down diving at below 300 metres the time. They used to be able to stay down there for 2 minutes before they had a convulsion. And if they're in ketosis, they can actually stay there for 5.5 minutes. So you can see the incredible effectiveness of how much better ketones are for your brain.
Absolutely.
What is the best source of ketones? What's the best fat that's going to really quickly convert into ketones? Coconut oil or medium chain fatty acids. So you can see why I'm calling that the bomb, because it converts really, really rapidly into this stuff. This massive big long name there is the ketone that the brain prefers to use as a fuel source. And I can't even say that middle one. That is, more commonly for the rest of the body cells. And of course, they both break down into acetone. Now, all the Nucerity girls will recognise acetone. And what do we know about acetone, Heather? It wants to be a gas. So where do you excrete the byproducts from your ketones? Out through your lungs. So the poor kidneys don't even have to deal with the waste from that energy source.
Absolutely.
Another big source of inflammation in the body that's going to affect your weight loss is poor digestion, because it's a huge driver of inflammation in the body. So what you see here is the cells in your bowel, and they're meant to all stack nice and close to each other and have these it's called a tight junction between them all. But when there's inflammation, then what happens is that these gaps start appearing. And so partially digested food can get through, and it's really important to be aware that the immune system is very, very active in this area of your body. And so if you're not digesting, especially things like gluten and dairy, you get a lot of autoimmune problems in your body, because you're getting these short chains of amino acids instead of single amino acids. Now, how do we reduce inflammation and improve our digestive function? So the nighttime drops come in here. So They help with a lot of maintenance. They help reduce cortisol, so you get the police off the streets. It helps your body just metabolize just a lot better, but it's really, really effective for your gastrointestinal tract. The other thing that we use for the gut is the shake that we've got here. Now, this gives us the source of amino acids, and I haven't even spoken about proteins yet. I'm going to get onto them soon, but using proteins from plants is a lot easier to digest than animal proteins. And so this has got a great source of protein from pea, cranberry, almonds. You can see all the ingredients there. That's a fantastic powder, and it's got a probiotic in there, so that is going to help your good bacteria digest properly and support everything, so we get improved digestion and reduced inflammation. Now, when we're talking about inflammation and stress and stuff, I just want to talk to you about a Nucerity product that has been available in Australia for quite a few years, and it is called Elite, and it has this amazing herb in it. It's an Ayurvedic herb called ashwagandha, or withania is the other name that it's known as. Look how much cortisol it reduces. It's just amazing. So it really calms you down fast and very effectively. When I dispense a herbal tonic, this is actually the first thing that goes into nearly every mix. I love this herb. The other thing that's in Elite is astaxanthin. Now, astaxanthin comes from this algae that grows in really pristine lakes that have been strained either by the pH or an increase in the temperature. And what happens is that these tiny little algae grow, and they grow like crazy when the water's under stress. And then, of course, the thing that loves astaxanthin is krill. And then what do krill feed on? Whales feed on krill. Look at this. This is a whale about to consume a great big cloud of krill. Look at that, sucking it right down. So that's why seafood, and especially seafood from the Arctic and Antarctic circles, are really, really high in astaxanthin, and they're really good for you. It's the thing that gives salmon the ability to leap up waterfalls. So if you've got someone that's got a lot of inflammation in their body, or they exercise a lot, this is a great way to get to get all your inflammation down. Okay, it works heaps faster, and it crosses the blood-brain barrier. Remember that. The brain loves it, so it's got to be good for you. Elite also has aloe vera in it, so that soothes down the digestive tract and stops all the inflammation that I was just talking about a few minutes ago. And it also has L-lysine in it. So lysine is an essential amino acid that we need especially for our immune system. So that's going to work really, really well in soothing any inflammation that's occurring in your digestive tract. And we haven't talked about all the crazy toxic compounds that are being released when the fatty acids are released. Remember, the liver hid them in the fat cell? What are we going to do with those, guys? There's this really, really effective detox program that RX has developed. They have combined chlorella and spirulina with zeolite. Now, zeolite is a mineral, and it's kind of like a matrix, and it sucks the toxic compound inside it. And then, so we've got these toxic guys, see, they've been put in there, close the lid, and then it's shipped to the kidneys. And because the kidneys are protected by the zeolite shell, it will actually pass them out. Now, this is a fantastic way to get rid of all those crazy things that are coming out of your fat cells, and they do, like you do, release quite a lot from them. So You take this first thing in the morning with just a little bit of water. It's a bit powdery. It's also important that you don't mix it with a metal spoon because it's going to suck all the metal out of the spoon, and then your drink is going to taste very metallic, and the zeolite will all be full of the metal from the spoon, and it's not going to be able to take any crazy things out. So mix it up with a plastic spoon, just in a little bit of water, and this does an amazing job of detoxing you. And I honestly think everyone should take this every day. Okay, now how are we going to get rid of the damage that all of those street parties did? Remember all the little cul-de-sacs and little tiny lanes and stuff where all the glucose molecules were stuck? And there was damage done to them, to the surface of the roads and to the wires, the nerve endings. So we're going to try and do something to support all these tiny little blood vessels, improve our heart, help our brain work better, help improve our vision, and more importantly, improve our kidney function. Vignali. This is so amazing. Grapeseed extract just repairs all that damage. And not just to the blood vessels, but to the nerves as well. Because this is the solution to those street parties that were occurring in the tiny little cul-de-sacs of our metropolis. Finally, here we are at protein. Now, everyone knows that protein is really good for us. There's 20 different types of amino acids that we need to create structure, mostly like muscles and tendons, ligaments, things like that. But also proteins used for really complicated metabolism in our body. Now, I just mentioned that we use amino acids or proteins to make muscles. But it's very important to understand that we can make muscle, but we can also take it down just as quickly because we need amino acids for all that really complicated metabolism. Okay, so the body will sacrifice the muscles in order to be able to function properly. So we don't want our muscle structure to be compromised when we're losing weight. So how do we prevent the body breaking down our muscles? Branch chain amino acids. Now, there's 3 amino acids. I haven't put them here, sorry. But if you take or you eat these, they go straight to the muscles. They don't have to go through the liver and have oxygen attached to it. So I want you to think of branch chain amino acids as Uber Eats for the muscles. Everything, oh, I haven't got a packet of it. It's called Power Boost. Okay, so this is Power Boost. And then if you want your skin and your hair to look really great when you're losing weight, then you need to also be looking after all the nutrition that those areas need. So this is a fantastic combination, especially these guys here. Those two there, they're patented things that just have got so many minerals in it that are really good for your hair, skin and nails. So I'm not going to stay on this slide too long. If anyone wants to study it, they can pause the recording. But we've got all of these different things that affect weight loss, and this is all the solutions to it. And they're available in the RX range. They're just such a high-end, high-quality products. I'm so impressed with them. So now we've reduced the size of our metropolis. It's manageable, or the streets are straight, they've been repaved, the nerves are working properly, we've got glucose under control, and we've got heaps of energy and we're feeling better now, yeah? So the bottom line is that you need to ask yourself, when you put something in your mouth, are you feeding your fat cells